Chapter 4. Batattakoth Delkter, Revisiting Delktu. To sum up the Vorlash Manor in a word, it was a labyrinth. Immediately after leaving the spaceport, the corridors seemed comparatively wide, though quite narrow for the main passages of a manor of this size, and soon enough, they were only barely spacious enough for a single personal transporter. There were periodic cavities along the walls, however, probably so that transporters could pass each other by. That being said, there were no pedestrians walking the halls, let alone transporters. The place was as deserted as a ghost town. A myriad of other corridors branched off from the corridor that the transporter, upon which Jint and the rest were riding, was whizzing down. Unbelievably, those passages were even narrower. Some of them were debatably not even really passages at all. It made much more sense to assume they were just gaps the manor's designers forgot to close up. The path the transporter took wasn't straight, either. It often turned, and sometimes, not at right angles. Some of the bends in the road were at difficult-to-describe angles. That was to say nothing of all the slopes they'd be forced to go up and down, all the bridges suspended far above what seemed to be other passages, and all the open spaces they'd encounter. Those open spaces could not be called plazas or squares, since one got the distinct impression they existed for no other reason than because the architects were too lazy to fill them. One such space, however, was lined with the wreckage of whatever it was that had been placed there, so somebody somewhere must have thought the empty spaces an exercise in absurdity. By all appearances, if that wreckage wasn't once part of some barber's chair or operating table, it could only have been a torture rack. At this point, Jint felt giddy, like they might travel through a hole in the wall and end up passing through somebody's personal garden. Sure enough, they really did travel along a lane in a flower bed. There weren't any holes in the wall, but there were places where the ceiling got so low they had to duck. As he soaked in his surroundings with curiosity, Jint noticed the signage in the official language of the Rick Parl, that had been left here and there. Question, Jint asked Diruz. Was this place used by the enemy? Yes, he nodded, still facing forward. It seems it was seized and used as a barracks. So did they remodel the place to look like this? Having never visited the manor before the war, I'm afraid I can't tell you for sure, she replied politely. I think it was probably like this from the beginning, though. If by like this, you mean this disorderly. The clan prefers layouts they can get lost in. Maybe they suffer from agoraphobia. I once visited the capital manor of the House of Elkash, said Lafier. While I was very young and don't remember much, I do seem to recall it being maze-like. There you go. A layout like this could never have been dreamt of by the likes of the Three Nations Alliance, said Dirose with pride. Upon hearing the tone she'd taken, his read on her age grew slightly shakier. This place would be a paradise for cats, he commented. Glad I didn't bring Diaho with us. Usually, as long as Jint wasn't taking him to the bathtub, Diaho would stay docile in his arms, but if he ever caught sight of this labyrinth, the temptation would be too great. It'd definitely be a tall order to find him again, the transmitter in his collar notwithstanding. It wasn't as though Jint refrained from bringing a cat in anticipation of the manor's inner layout. He just thought it might take away from the majesty and dignity. At the moment, Diaho was in his carrier alongside some furniture. Arrangements had been made for Diaho to get taken to the living room. He'd probably already been whisked away from the Bokbaruch as they spoke. After advancing a while, the ceiling turned transparent. Countless stars dotted the ebony of space above. Jin thought he'd gotten used to them not twinkling, but they did come across as lacking. This must be the manor's top floor, the area farthest from the artificial gravity generator surface. Please use this room, said Diruz, stopping the transporter in one of the top floor's chambers. The ceiling was around 1,000 dag high, and the room was 16 square dag. At the center stood a small but well-manicured garden, and next to it, a pond in the shape of a gourd. Judging by the white vapor, it was water for bathing. On the opposite side of the bath pond was a strewn carpet, a set of couches, and a table. That area could be thought of as the lounge. In addition, there were individual pieces of furniture placed here and there, as well as 2 extravagant beds, complete with canopies, set a considerable distance apart. Pretty open room, said Jint, casting a sideways glance to see what Lafier thought. The royal princess was expressionless, seeming neither particularly fond of it nor particularly displeased. Jint gave the room another scan. It occurred to him that it didn't fit with the rest of the manor. If the Emior clan were actually a bunch of agoraphobes, wouldn't this room be their nightmare? Jint wasn't an agoraphobe, and even he was having a bit of trouble coping. I thought that in this state, it would be easier to tell where everything is, said Diras. Most guests seem to prefer it this way. She worked her wrist gear, and walls rose up from the floor. Once the walls had stopped rising, at around the 500 dag mark, a maze very much to the Emior clan's liking had been created. Now then, allow me to take my leave, she said, fixing her eyes on them. Thank you very much, Jint bowed. What are you doing? She whispered, pulling on a sleeve of his long robe. Step off already. Jint realized he was still atop the transporter and stepped off. Your luggage will be here shortly, said Diras. Do you have any other questions in the meantime? No questions, thanks for asking, said Jint. It seemed their wrist gears had already taken in all the information that was necessary for living in the manor, including the various call numbers to request services, the name registry of the main staff, and the guide map to the enormous labyrinth that the Emior clan members, who evidently shared a penchant for causing headaches, had seen fit to erect. Naturally, the floor plan of this room could also be pulled up using their wrist gears, along with info on how to raise and lower the partitions. Goodbye, said Diruz, setting off on the transporter. Thanks to the partitions, the area where the couches and the table were situated looked more like a proper lounge area. Surrounded on three sides by the walls, it looked out directly onto the garden. The bath pond on the other side was also surrounded by walls, making it a bathhouse with privacy. How drab, said Lafier. I'll fix it. Jint hooked up his wrist gear into the CompuCrystal net, replacing the dull hue of the walls with some nice background video projections of a bird flying between picturesque clouds. He also sent some relaxing music to play at barely audible volume. Like that? Sure, it's fine. It'll do. I thank you for your words of praise. Now then, I shall be setting back to work. To do what? A trifling matter compared to carrying out your orders, Fee Lartner. Jint checked to see whether his wrist gear could establish contact with the land world below. Luckily, the manor's CompuCrystal net was one with Delcta's own. That was a sign that the people of Delctu and the Liege had been on friendly terms. In many territory nations, due to mistrust between the Liege and the Land World Administration, the Fapitech, Liege's manor, and the Land World operated using separate CompuCrystal networks. The time had come for what Jint was really after. He searched for his closest friend from back when he'd lived in Delctu, pretending to be just another immigrant. Kay Durin. Unfortunately, it looked like Delctu was practically swarming with people named Kay Durin. 30,000 popped up in the listings. What do you feel like drinking? Asked Lafier. A cold coffee, he replied half-heartedly. Every land world citizen in Vorlash had a birth number. As long as one had a person's number down, they could be contacted no matter where they were. Unfortunately, Jint didn't know his friend's birth number. As such, he was forced to plug in as much of Durin's information as he could remember. Age, birthplace, place of residence by the time Jint left Delctu. At last, he narrowed it down to 1K Durin. Just in case, he requested a photo. That was him all right. The boy Jint had gotten to know through the Mintu team. Meanwhile, a mobile table had reached him with the drink Lafier had ordered. Jint took a sip. Just to let you know, I'm gonna be speaking in a language that's not Baranu, he warned her. Okay, she nodded. The rest was easy. He rang him up for an audio-only call, and Durin picked up immediately. Is this Kay Durin? Jint asked nervously. Well, if that's not a voice that stirs some memories, said Durin. Or I guess, it's not so much your voice as it is your accent. I know a handful of off-worlders, but you're the only bumpkin I know who can make our language sound so unsophisticated. It's like you encased your tongue in mud. Half-dry mud. It's been a while, Lin Jint. Right back at you, Kay Durin. And it's been a while since I've spoken Delctunian too. Jint was relieved to learn his friend still remembered him. Come on, man, your Delctunian hasn't changed since we last saw each other. It still sounds like you're chewing hay dipped in mud, just like old times. They'd last seen each other on the day Jint left Delctu. So then, Your Excellency the noble prince of the Kingdom of Hyde, Have you decided to ditch the aristocracy? Not yet. I'm actually a count now. Congratulations, or maybe not. Did something happen to your dad? Well, yeah, but it's no big whoop, he said, keen to keep the conversation elsewhere. How's business doing on your end? Don't have a business yet. And to think, you got promoted to account while my uncle still never misses a beat pushing me around. That's a shame. I mean, about your business, not about your uncle. Jint licked his lips. Now is the time. So hey, I have a job proposition for you. A job proposition? He asked, with a slight air of innocence. You know exactly what I mean, Jint smiled wryly. Course I do. I just couldn't believe you'd be hiring me. Is it that crazy? You bet it is. What are the servant vassals of a pathetic excuse for a noble like you to do? Unless you make me a cabinet minister or something. Then I might consider it. I can make you a cabinet minister, if that's what you want. Jint hadn't originally planned to create such a high-flown position, but depending on Durrant's attitude, he didn't mind founding the position just to pester him. Wait, hold on, said Durrant, genuinely disconcerted. If you do that, won't the vassals that are already working there go in a tizzy? Or is that level of self-indulgence just a fart in the wind to a big fancy noble? Maybe you'd be okay with that, but I'll pass. There's more mental fatigue in it for me than glory. I already know my head would explode from work I haven't the first idea about. You already know? From experience. I told you, I'm working under my uncle. He treasures his relatives, but he has a funny way of showing it. It's nice that he gives us jobs, but he never tells us stuff we should know in advance, and then he gets cross if we don't deliver. There's nothing to worry about. Oh, I know. I don't want to be a cabinet minister, but I'll gladly take the job of harem master. I don't know how many concubines you've got now, but feel free to leave them all to me. You may get a bunch of newborn princes and princesses that look kinda like me, but I can assure you that'll be one giant coincidence, so don't think about it too hard. You're still blessed with a vivid imagination, I see. No dice? I haven't got any concubines to begin with. Not a single one? For real? Said Durrant, shocked. Then what the hell did you become an imperial noble for? Not sure, but not to surround myself with a bevy of harem girls. Your values leave me scandalized and appalled. I can live with that. While we're on the subject, precious few imperial nobles have harems. In fact, as far as I know, there was only ever one, but he's dead now. And he's been succeeded by a woman. Then I'll have to turn down your offer. I've no ears to lend a noble who hasn't even got a harem. Come on, don't say that. But he left it at that, since he knew Durrant was just joking. After a moment's thought, Jint added, before long, I'll be creating a harem that'll knock your socks off. Despite himself, Jint checked Lafayer's expression. The royal princess was drinking her peach juice and stared at him blankly before flashing a meaningful smile and activating her wrist gear. Well, might as well hear you out, said Durrant. But only face to face. We're talking the rest of my life here. That was my intention from the start. I'm in the Vorlash Manor right now. Could you possibly make it up here? We'd be covering your flight, obviously. Can't. My mom's last will says I'm not allowed on spaceships. Wait, your mother passed away? Jint had made her acquaintance. He'd occasionally visit Durrant's place after Minshu practice, and every time he did, he'd avail himself of her home cooking. Nah, she's doing good. Dude, don't spook me like that. Why so spooked? My mom's fit as a fiddle. My family line's always been super healthy on both my mother's and my father's sides. That's exactly why I've got to follow her last will and testament. Sorry, I don't really get what you're trying to tell me. What don't you get? Following the will of somebody who's still alive? I don't think that warrants explaining. Who wants to rigorously follow the last wills of dead people? You know what, never mind that, said Jint, realizing he'd been about to tread into unproductive waters. Let's meet up. I don't mind if we leave out work talk either. I'm totally down. Just don't make me have to go up there. All right, you got it. I'll head down there. How about we meet at the halfway point? You know, the spaceport? No need to worry on my behalf. It doesn't make much difference whether I stop at the spaceport or go straight to your house. That right? I hate to impose, so I owe you one. Come dressed in Delctunian clothes, though. The old bat next door's got a weak heart. I've told her again and again to just get it replaced already, but she really hates hospitals. Startling her with your wardrobe is a recipe for disaster. A rotter like you, worrying about that? Don't tell me you've gone and forgotten the basic Delctunian rules of life? I don't know how the Ov do it, but down here, whenever there's a funeral, the whole neighborhood's gotta pitch in. And let me tell you, I'm busy at the best of times. I refuse to get dragged into community service, you hear me? Now there's the Durin I know. I just knew we could come to understand each other. All right, I'll send you the details and the meetup time in a bit. Don't bring a whole bunch of servants with you. My mom's healthy as an ox, and in her will she states we've always got to feed our guests before letting them go home. And our dining room only fits 5. All right. I won't go overboard, I promise. Catch you later then. I look forward to the day we can discuss plans for our harem construction project. With that, the line dropped. Jint hoped against hope the royal princess didn't catch Durin's parting words. Right, so I'll be stepping out to meet an old friend of mine, he explained hurriedly. Okay, I'll pilot, said Leifier. Huh. If you're headed to the spaceport, then we ought to borrow a small craft or some other ship, which I'll pilot for you, she said, as though it were the most obvious thing in the world. Loath as I am to trouble you so, Filartner, I thank you. Using his wrist gear, Jint pulled up info on how to access the land world below. Looks like there are regular flights, though. An intrasystem ship makes a trip between the manor and the spaceport once every day, so I'll just take that ship. Would my company be a nuisance? Don't be silly. If you want to come with, I'd be delighted. That was no lie either. Jint had always wanted to show her the land world. She's only ever touched down onto one twice, and both times it was a world Jint was unfamiliar with, so he hadn't been able to play the guide. Not that they'd had any time for leisurely sightseeing anyway. Delctu, on the other hand, was his second home. He wanted to see the scenery she could never witness in the Ov world reflected in those jet-black eyes of hers. Then maybe, just maybe, she'd grow to understand him on a deeper level. Jint had gotten a good taste of the wonders of the Ov world. Now it was Leifier's turn to marvel at the natural features of a land world. Sadly, Yestesh's warning was stuck in his head. And even if Yestesh hadn't warned him, deep down he knew that bringing a royal princess down to the surface was out of the question. He had to ensure her safety, and he had to be subtle about it. Then it's settled, said Leifier, with no way of knowing Jint's inner conflict. How did she get this unconcerned about her own safety anyway? Right. But you did listen in on our conversation, didn't you? Yep. Starting partway through. Then you know we're going to have to dress you in Delctunian fashion. What's Delctunian fashion like? She asked, furrowing her brow. She was no doubt recalling the garb she'd been forced to wear in Clasbiel. It's not that different from of wear, Jint explained. Only, it's separated into top and bottom halves. Also, Delctunians bare their legs from the knees down. Bare legs? Leifier's brow furrowed even more. There's diversity in the colors and patterns, and there's strictly male and female clothes. It's somewhat hard for outsiders to grasp, but I think that'll resolve itself, since trends aren't that big of a thing in Delctu. It's very conservative. The fashion probably hasn't changed much from when I lived there. They really don't wear anything from the knees down? Yeah. Well, apart from shoes and socks. Those they wear. I can't believe they think nothing of that. The Ov didn't typically expose any skin apart from the hands and head, even during childhood. In a sense, they might just be the most modest race in the galaxy. It's not embarrassing for them. Everybody dresses the same way. Besides, it fits the climate. I happen to like it a lot. Oh shoot, we need to dye your hair too. Leifier moaned. Can't forget Kay Durin's mom's food, either. Is it hard to stomach? Not to me. I'm looking forward to it. But it is Delctu cuisine. They use dairy products and spices galore. I don't think it'd suit your palate. I see. Leifier's tone grew uncharacteristically deflated. The whole planet's under the impression that the more butter they use, the better. And being guests from far away, and Durin's mother knows her manners, you can be sure she'll whip up for you what, in her eyes, is the perfect meal. Oh, maybe you should try some scallions while we're down there. Scallions? They're an endemic vegetable and a Delctu specialty. It can be nice if you have some as a little spice, but for whatever reason Delctunians use the things like they were just tomatoes or something. If I recall correctly, the first time I tried scallion broth, My mouth was burning for 3 whole days. And trust me, I drank plenty of water. And I'd have to eat some? If you visit Kay Durant's house, yeah. You don't actually want to take me, do you? I'm just giving you fair warning. You lie, she declared. I swear it's all true. You can see for yourself. Just search for info on Delctunian fashion and cuisine. I'm not doubting you about that. Then what? I don't care for that paternalistic expression on your face. I'm making a paternalistic expression? Jint stroked his face. Absolutely. Look, I'm worried for your safety, all right, he confessed. This land world was under enemy control until very recently. If I take Her Highness the Royal Princess with me to a place like that without any guards, His Highness the King of Cryob's going to wring my neck. My father will do no such thing, she snapped, glaring. Fine, maybe not, but that's just a figure of speech. You get what I'm trying to say. Leifir rose to her feet and drew closer. Jint, too, got to his feet. I have the right to worry about you, don't I? You do, said Leifir. So don't hide the truth. I'm happy you're concerned for me, but I don't like being deceived, even if it comes from a good place. I'm sorry. I just didn't want to offend you. I'm more offended that you thought that puerile lie would be enough to fool me. Guess you've got me there, he said, scratching his cheek. Besides, I'm concerned for you too. And that makes me happy. But in my case, you really needn't be. Really? Even after you've been abducted and imprisoned not once, but twice. Oh, I haven't forgotten. But it'll be all right. This isn't Lobnus 2, and it's not the Feb-Barony either. This is the planet I grew up on. My home. I wasn't born here, but it's my home nonetheless. I've even got a friend here. To tell you the truth, I'd love to show you around my home planet. But, okay. I believe you. Thank you. I'll be going it alone this time, but once we know for sure it's safe, we'll go together. And not just to Delc2. To Martinu, too. Sure. Leifir nodded. I'm glad you understand, he said, clasping her shoulders. I apologize for trying to trick you. I just want to get a lay of the situation for the time being. You'd best come back in one piece. I will. Promise. By the way, Jint, Leifir whispered sweetly in his ear. What? He said, with a dreamy look on his face. I want to hear about that little harem construction project of you two. Best speak the whole truth and nothing but the truth. I don't like being deceived.